Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a movie review. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Adam Wingard, and this film is called Blair Witch. So Blair Witch takes place 20 years after the Blair Witch Project, in which Heather and a group of her friends went into the forest in Burkittsville, and they never come back out. Now the reason why they went into the woods is because they wanted to do a documentary surrounding a local legend of the town called the Blair Witch. So when they didn't come back out, the police investigated, but no one has been able to come up with anything. So 20 years have passed, and still nothing, until Heather's brother comes across this footage on YouTube that appears to document her, Heather. And so this is enough curiosity for the brother to really want to go out into the woods to see if she's in fact still alive. So he gets together a group of his friends, they make their own documentary, basically retracing the steps of his sister 20 years earlier, and they're going to try and answer the question that no one appears to have any answers for. So when they do that, they start to run into these very strange occurrences that basically makes them believe that maybe there's a possibility that they're going to suffer a similar fate to that of the unfortunate travellers 20 years earlier. So what happens at that point on, and whether or not this guy can find out what happened to his sister is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Blair Witch. I definitely think Blair Witch Project and Blair Witch is a classic indication of what horror has become, and it's a classic indication of two eras of horror. Basically the Blair Witch era, the Blair Witch Project era, was all about using your imagination. It was all about subtlety. It was all about very small aspects of horror combining to make a snowball effect, to make something so big at the end. And you actually felt like you were on a very slow burn sort of cooker that was threatening to boil over in the end. So I thought that the Blair Witch Project was a masterclass at true tension, at true horror, at the sort of horror that creeps you out. It doesn't necessarily give you a complete scare, but it just makes you feel very uneasy, and it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And that's everything that the Blair Witch had going for it, is that it had a very basic sort of way about it. It had just a very simple sort of found footage aspect. It was the film that really kick-started found footage. So it's the grandfather of a subgenre, and so for that reason it's going to have a lot of fans, and I think a lot of people are going to be uneasy about this movie because of the simple fact that it does go against everything that made the original great in the first place. Now a lot of people actually believe that the original was in fact a real film. Is that how realistic it was told? And the movie was all about creating a monster inside your head, whereas in this movie Adam Wingard doesn't allow you to create that monster. So yes, the movie is scary, there are some truly spooky moments in this movie, but it actually felt like a different kind of film. It felt like a movie that wasn't basing itself on the reputation that was created from this movie 20 years ago. And so that's what I didn't really like about this movie, is that yes, it is creepy, but it just doesn't have that Blair Witch feel about it. And that to me was something that is an indication of today's horror. Today's horror is about jump scares. No one wants to use their imagination. No one wants to think, what could be hiding in the darkness. Everyone needs to know what's happening in the darkness. And this movie actually felt like Adam Wingard was one of those guys who actually criticised the original for being boring. Now, a lot of people actually did that. They criticised it, saying it was too slow, it was just not enough was happening. And it actually felt like Adam Wingard was one of those people, and he said to himself, yes, I'm just going to make this movie now a lot more interesting. I'm going to make it a lot more action-packed. It's going to have extravagant camera angles. It's going to have a very clear picture. It's going to have, balls to the wall sort of action, craziness at the end of it. And that, to me, as I said, is something that's good on its own, but it doesn't pay the respect that the Blair Witch Project deserves. So yeah, you've got these extravagant camera angles that I thought were wasted. They really didn't need to be used, because after a while it actually felt like this wasn't found footage. And so the simplicity of the original is lost in this one. And as I said, it's an indication of what horror is these days and what horror viewers actually want to see. And so there are, as I said, there are some very creepy moments, but there is a lot of potential in this film that I didn't think was expanded on. It could have been a lot better than it actually was, but I don't think it realised how good it could have been, because there were moments in there that I thought, yes, I'm onto something really good here. It's just starting to get very interesting, and then it forgets it, and it goes on to something else. And then once again, it'll start cooking up to something very interesting, then it forgets it and goes on to something else. So I think it was more concerned about the jump scares, about the visuals and actually seeing what you're seeing, instead of actually creating something that is very slow burn. And so a lot of people might appreciate that, but for me, being a lover of the original, I just think that this movie is it was a curse of having it under the same name. If this was a film on its own, then I think it would have been a lot better. But having that reputation, unfortunately, if you're going to name it Blair Witch, you're going to have the comparisons, and it's a natural thing. And I just don't think that comparing this to the original is going to leave a lot of people very happy with what they get. So I will say that I like the fact that Adam Wingard creates a little bit more lore as concerned with the Blair Witch. It gives you a little bit more depth. So although it's more of a remake, but it says it's a sequel, but there's enough material in there to say it is actually a sequel. But my problem with saying it's a sequel is that it does follow a lot of similarities with the original in its storytelling. People getting lost in the woods, going around in circles, all that is apparent in this film. So in one regard you have a remake, but on the other regard you have some creative liberties in there that make it a sequel. So whether you want to call it a reboot or a sequel, you could be justified for calling it either. But for me, I thought it was creepy, but I thought it could have been a lot better than it was, and unfortunately it's just the lack of subtlety kind of contradicts what the Blair Witch is all about, and as a result of that I was a little bit disappointed with what I got. But if you are a fan of the more modern style of film, then this is definitely one I would say go out there and check out. So overall for Blair Witch, not a bad film by any means, going to give it 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching my videos, and I'll see you later. Bye.